we haven't even seen that much in the way of anti-airs from Sonic Fox. Great duck under the spring. Splash misses the down two. He wanted to keep it simple and go through breakaway. Sonic Fox didn't spend the breakaway until the combo misses. He's on the verge of making this comeback. Splash about to be very haunted by this round if this goes the wrong way. Looking for Chip, gets the air-to-air. Splash saves himself.
I can tell when somebody's had a lumberjack slam. All right, can he hit the crush here? He has to kill, and he does. Oh, still Chip though. Very relevant factor. Doesn't commit to a safe meeting. Gets punished on the roll, but not punished hard, so Uncle Drew has to seal it here, and he does so with Chip.
Is it time to teleport? Is it time? Protect. Splash commits the dive kick and loses the tournament. It is Sonic Fox winning so clean in this reset.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another Damn Sports podcast once again. I am Drew Torres, and today I decided to switch it up a little bit. I know normally our viewers and listeners are used to listening to us talk about the NFL, the MLB, college basketball, the UFC, and everything like that, but I wanted to share with you one of my passions, which is competitive esports and competitive fighting games, and I thought, who better than to bring in to talk about competitive fighting games than Mr. Matthew Hogan himself, the godfather of fighting game knowledge, and Mr. MonkeyBizness. How you doing, man?
I'm doing lovely. I'm thrilled to be the first person you thought to go to introduce such a personally important topic, not just for you, but especially for me. I've been doing this for 9 years now, and I could talk about it for 9 years as well. Today, I think in the hour or so, I will do my best to convey the 9 years of knowledge, of culture, tradition, hype, everything that this community has provided for me, including friendships. Friendships made instantly at one tournament like you and I created at TFGT a couple months ago in Buffalo.
Yeah, and I was actually going to mention that. The first time you and I met was as you said, the most recent local Buffalo fighting game community tournament for Mortal Kombat 11, and you were so gracious to come up and share your knowledge with me, as even to this day, I'm still just a below average online Scorpion player. But before we get into MK11 and the current state of the Mortal Kombat franchise, everybody loves to hear an awesome origin story. And I was going to ask you, what is the origin of you diving into Mortal Kombat and NRS games in general? Because for me, Mortal Kombat will always be my favorite franchise of all time. I could definitely tell you every single character that has been in every single game of the Mortal Kombat franchise. I've played every single game. How did you begin with the bloody video game franchise that is Mortal Kombat?
Well, Mortal Kombat 9 came out in 2011, and it was a reboot, at least like a soft reboot of the entire franchise. So I would have said that I was late to the Mortal Kombat party that's been going on since like 1992. But because Mortal Kombat 2011 was like this reboot, it almost feels like I didn't miss anything, because that game's aesthetic and roster and the stages they brought in are such classics that like I instantly became a huge fan, because the game like does such a good job of bringing you in from zero to fully immersed. The story mode actually was a big contributor for me falling in love with the universe of that game. And I think Mortal Kombat, that 2011 entry rather, had the first like cinematic fighting game story mode that made me care so instantly about what these crazy characters were doing.
That's something that's like an NRS staple too, right? Like their story modes always feel like it's like a movie.
Yeah, and because Mortal Kombat 9's story told the story of the first 3 games, it felt like a 5-hour movie or like a book, like this incredible journey. I felt the whole lineage by the end of it. But before I got there, I needed somebody to introduce me to the game's existence outside of YouTube videos that reference Finish Him or Fatality, which I definitely saw a lot of while I was growing up. I believe the Smosh Mortal Kombat theme might have really been my first introduction.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of people's first introduction. It was a great one.
2007's finest YouTube video. But 2011's finest game was definitely Mortal Kombat 9 / Mortal Kombat 2011. And I only was able to participate in it because of my older brother having a casual interest in all the big fighting games that were coming out. And like most people at the time, we had intense interest in whatever free demo was coming out on the PlayStation Store or Xbox Marketplace. My brother picked up that demo, which had Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Melina, and Johnny Cage, staples to the franchise, and most importantly, two kind of rival characters for my older brother to play and me to play the opposite of. So his favorite color was blue. It always was. So he just became that Sub-Zero player. And as early as the demo, I was playing Scorpion just in contrast to him. This theme continued throughout my whole family, even for years prior. My younger brother, I played a lot of Smash Melee with and Project M. He was a Luigi player and I played Mario. So the different sides of the same coin. And the best part was, like, I was older and I had been playing the game for longer. So Mario kicking Luigi's ass and, like, Luigi having this, like, internal inferiority complex so perfectly matched the way we played that game. But it just keeps inspiring more and more competitive drive as the years pass.
And Super Smash Bros. Is such a competitive game to begin with, so I can totally see that.
Yeah. I mean, the developer may have intended for it to be the party game, but even in our, like, casual household with 4 boys playing games, it should have been the casual experience, but it just became competitive because that's who we were. And our parents didn't need to hire a babysitter if there were, like, 3 or 4 GameCube controllers plugged in. So, like, that's just how it went down.
Yeah, they knew you guys were going to stay out of trouble unless you got in a fight because of the game, right?
Yeah. We were pretty good at just removing ourselves from the room after too salty of a loss. But Mortal Kombat made the losses extra salty because when my brother first beat me in the game, we were playing it to compete before I knew, like, what a fatality would look like in Mortal Kombat in, like, the PS3 era of HD gore. And when he beat me and hit me with, like, just the most devastating violence I'd ever seen on a screen, I was, like, so repulsed. I hated it so much. But the thought trickled into my mind that I might be able to do the same thing to him. And that's where the passion comes from. Like, that's the Mortal Kombat staple is not the fatality just for gore's sake, but the psychological victory, triumphant victory of doing that to an opponent that just challenged you so much. And if it's your brother, it's always personal. So, like, I think fatalities are meant to be done on somebody you're, like, close with and somebody who's, like, really willing to try to do the same thing to you.
Oh, no, absolutely. And between brothers, that type of stuff can really generate such competitive tension. But for me, my older brothers are 8 and 9 years older than me. Now, the middle brother that's 8 years older than me, my first Mortal Kombat exposure was when I was, like, 4 or 5, which was not good.
Okay.
We played Mortal Kombat 4 on the Nintendo 64. He unplugged my controller. I did not notice, so I was sitting there hitting buttons, screaming at the TV, like, why is nothing happening? He ends up double flawlessing me with Reptile. I was Scorpion, obviously. And he performed the Reptile, I believe it was the acid spit fatality, where it kind of just, like, melts your entire body. Mm-hmm. That scarred me for years. Seeing that when I was younger,
you get one game when you're 4 or 5 and it stays with you.
Yes, and it was that specific fatality, and it took until probably I was 10 or 11. I was still traumatized with Mortal Kombat. Whenever someone mentioned the name of the game, I was terrified. Mm-hmm. So basically, they performed flooding. They locked me in a room. We were playing Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, and they forced me to watch Scorpion's fatality on Nitara.
Do you have decent relationships with your brothers?
I do now.
Okay.
Yeah, I was so much younger that they just loved to pick on me in that way. You know, it made me tougher, I'd say.
It's kind of like an experimental guinea pig lab rat thing. You know, just show somebody the most messed up shit in the video game and see what happens to them. And somehow, instead of trauma and avoidance, here you are bringing me on to talk to you about this game.
Exactly. It's like some sort of Stockholm syndrome.
That's the exact phrase I would have used, but I didn't have it yet. Thank you.
You're welcome. But sorry to cut you off. Continue with the origins of Matt Hogan in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. So this Mortal Kombat demo comes out, and it only had offline versus. So I could basically only play my brother in training mode and the CPU dummies that you could play. But because it was a demo and it was free, it developed intrigue throughout all the kids in my 8th grade class. So we both have relatively young Mortal Kombat experiences that the ESRB would not recommend. If it were rated T, I would have been able to play it by then. I think I was exactly 13. Maybe at the time of the demo, I might have turned 14 when the game actually came out in April. I remember it came out on the same day as Portal 2, and that day was Portal Kombat Day for the video game community. And you know I got both. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I could fry my brain on Mortal Kombat, grinding combos for 6 hours, and then rebuild my brain's strength playing Portal 2, the puzzle game, and kind of balance everything out into one healthy video game addiction.
That's definitely what it is.
Yeah. And so because like all these other kids were, I mean, they're 8th graders, the year's 2011, they're all talking smack. It's what they do. No matter what you claim to have, somebody in this class claimed to have better, claimed to be able to do things to you that aren't actually even in the game. They're just like making up combos out of their mouths just to like hype themselves up. And so I wasn't the best student in middle school, so I was able to out practice them and at least become like the local champion within the first month of our sleepovers playing that game. So like naively, not actually knowing how to play the game at an optimal level, doing combos or having defense or really anything. But it still mattered so much.
Like, oh, of course. I mean, that's your little bubble at that point in your life.
Yeah.
It's like, if I can beat all of my friends at this game, then I'm the best in the world. It's just how it is.
The bubble started to burst when I was trying to play more online, actually getting into the game. I had moved on from Scorpion to Smoke, and I was struggling against good players that I would run into. And that idea started to bother me really deeply. I noticed I had a negative win-loss ratio online. In that game's online play, by the way, that wasn't very good. The delay-based netcode created laggy situations frequently with players you wouldn't expect to lag with. But to me, I knew no other alternative, so that was just part of the game. Like the lag adaptation was a skill too, and it was for all of our friends that also played.
Now, I need to cut you off real quick. This entire chronology for MK9, is mirroring what I experienced with that game as well. I started off with Scorpion. I was killing all of my friends. I became the best, and then I flipped to Smoke, and I was getting destroyed online. So this is hilarious.
Serious?
Yeah, this is like a perfect parallel.
So we just like the really cool ninjas, huh?
I guess so.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, those characters are so aesthetically cool in that game. Smoked hair flying around. The physics look so beautiful on it.
I loved his like little teleporting thing. It was so badass.
Shake parry.
Yes. Yes.
All of that stuff was cool. I needed to find cooler stuff to do with both of those characters to stand a chance, though. So I YouTube searched for combo tutorials, and I was blessed to go through the slog of mediocre YouTube content and eventually run into this channel called Medina for Life, which was one of the contributors to a shooter channel called Next Gen Tactics, which I watched a lot when I was a competitive Call of Duty player. And somehow Medina for Life also either was already into fighting games or got into Mortal Kombat 9 and became the first streamer for the local Chicago scene. So he was friends with players like Delaroche and the early Galloping Ghost arcade crew, which all traveled to Final Round 2011 to stream the tournament that ran there. And the tournament was uploaded on his channel in separate VOD videos that each told you like what characters were playing, what players were playing, and like where in the bracket it was. And this was my first time encountering a tournament VOD where I could just seemingly at will press one button and suddenly find the highest level demonstration of how to play characters in Mortal Kombat, and seeing them play not just doing combos, but also doing like things that have to do with playing your opponent started to blow my mind. And the commentary that came alongside the tournament VODs also started educating me in ways that I didn't expect. And that's when I realized there was like a real deep hook that was nestling its way into my jaw, and I was about to be like fished right in to this scene. I didn't know it would be for the rest of my life, because at this time I was still playing either online or like at 8th grade sleepovers. I didn't find offline until 2 years later, which had to do with online. Somebody who I was playing in Injustice, which is made by the same studio, we were chatting on the PS3 chat, and he said, "Oh, you're from Buffalo? Have you heard of the Buffalo fighting game community?" And I was like, "Huh? What? What's that?" a fighting game community in the city that I live in. He told me to look up the Facebook page, and from that point on, I saw like active posts from people looking to play games, or even some people making content. There was a live stream starting to surface at that time, and after talking to my friend Dante, who I had also gotten into Mortal Kombat and fighting games, we just, like, his dad drove us down to the Golf Dome where Buffalo Game Space used to be, and we showed up. We didn't exactly know where the Buffalo Game Space was at that time, but we saw one of the guys from the live stream that was going on that day, actually two of them, Fred, No One Man Sales, and Dan Geef, were walking out, and I said, "Hey, fighting games." And they said, "Oh, you're here to play fighting games? Here, right this way."
It's funny that they just respond to that. Hey, fighting games.
yeah, I had to get it out because they were about to walk past, going to like a restaurant or something.
Imagine if they didn't respond. Your life would be so much different.
I would have wandered there eventually, but it's much better to be like actually introduced by a person.
Yeah.
Because if I were to walk in there alone, the Golf Dome Buffalo Game Space was this like absolutely massive room filled to the brim with different setups and people. And just because of how spacious it was and the fact that it was one room, it was almost like a little bit more socially intimidating than other spaces would have been for playing fighting games.
Especially for you being so young.
Yeah. By the point I had an offline scene, I think I had just turned 16.
Yeah, that's young.
Yeah. And within weeks, I brought in my younger brother, Ludi, who at that point was 13 or 12, and complete with like the whole 12-year-old face style, like level of height. Like bringing a kid into that scene does so much for them, because you still have that sponge brain as a kid. You're like absolutely ready to absorb and learn, and by the time you develop later, you're going to be a better player than anybody that entered the scene when they were older. Like that's just the way it happens.
Oh yeah,
my older
that's
brother
the
was
case
better
with
than
anything.
me. Yeah. My older brother was better than me when we played Smash Melee when he was 6 and I was 4. Now I'm better than him at fighting games. Not that he cares to compete that much anymore. In Mortal Kombat 11, at least, the same has proven true with my younger brother Ludi, who has certainly eclipsed me in Mortal Kombat 11. Yeah. And I will let him have that.
Yeah, he's definitely nasty, and I can definitely credit him to me being introduced to the Buffalo fighting game community. I mean, I saw him playing at East Coast Throwdown on YouTube, and I saw that he was wearing a University at Buffalo hoodie, so I was just like, I got to reach out to this guy and see if he at least wants to get some games in. And
so
you
found
told
him
me,
on Twitter?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. I added him on Twitter, and basically, he told me all about the Buffalo fighting game community, and I've been hooked ever since. Now, it's crazy to think that basically, like I said, yours and my journey through MK9 was so linear. The difference was I stayed at that level where I just would not research or put in my best effort to learn anything past, I know how to do a 40% combo. I wouldn't know how to set that up.
Still feels so good.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. But like, if you don't know how to set it up, then it's not useless. There's so many, like, I just didn't know there were so many different intricate factors that come into winning a fighting game. And I'm only just learning about all these factors now. So the difference is when you were young, you dove right in. You were like, I need to learn about this. I'm checking YouTube. I'm watching these videos. Me, I took a good 5-6 year hiatus, and then I saw MK11, and then I finally decided to dive in. I wish I made my decisions differently.
That's why I feel I got really lucky, because if you give anything a YouTube search, on YouTube, even back then, but especially now, the content you run into is so often like absolutely like entry level, made to maximize views from the most amount of new players kind of content, and so little of it actually has to do with the competitive community. There was like such an overabundance of like the same kind of tutorial, and even early in my YouTube days, I was making that content. You can find on my channel, they're still uploaded, like really, really terrible Mortal Kombat 9 combo tutorials. But the catch is that I was making them in a way that was like incredibly presentable for new players. I had like different levels of difficulty for the combos that you would like ideally like learn through and slowly get better at. So it was always like a mission. I've always been like a disciple of fighting games in general, even before I had an offline scene, and I wanted more people to be able to get into them.
A disciple's a great word. I like that.
Yeah. No, I got to spread this gospel, because like this scene, the fact that the fighting game community has been able to survive or thrive in so many different cities across the US or even globally, while being something that seems like such a pipe dream if you think about it. Like, we meet online through tags or voice chat sometimes, or observing a tournament and seeing a player with the University of Buffalo hoodie. And from such little stimulus that we're like so lucky to find, we actually make it to an offline setting with a local venue that we're able to play at, become friends at, and like make a regular recurring visit to every week, sometimes twice a week. I remember at Game On and at Buffalo Game Space too, we had Wednesdays and Saturdays for games. And if you're dedicating that time and that drive every day, even 2 days a week, it's impossible to not make friends there for life. And you go from a community and a scene to social cliques too.
That's honestly how it felt when I first went. Like, everybody was so welcoming. Everybody was so nice. I mean, your brother was great. He just seemed like he was excited to play against somebody else in MK11, because at that point there wasn't that many MK11 players at the game space, but it was still awesome to experience a community like that.
Mm-hmm. And it's something that I think I didn't have to work too hard to instill in him, that making sure the community remains sustainable across every different fighting game has to be a goal at the forefront of your mind as a fighting game player. Because like I said, what we do is wildly unique, and it's precarious too. We've lost venues in the past, and thankfully we have such strong leadership in our scene from people like Brian Stone, Cha-Cha. He instantly secured us the Buffalo Game Space venue, but that changes the carpools that come in and out, but carrying players. It changes if some people can make it on some days or not. And I mean, that can affect social dynamics too. The energy really changes if a venue goes or if a player has to move away, like the precarity of it is also what makes me appreciate it so much.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And every time I tell someone who isn't involved in video games, even like as a broad spectrum in any video game as much as we are into fighting games, I tell them like, oh, I go to this fighting game community and play Mortal Kombat with a bunch of other people, and they're like always super confused, but they don't understand that like this is something that really brings people together, and that's something I'm just finding out this year.
It's beyond heartwarming, bro. Like, my heart's already melted. Like, because it's an experience that is ancient to me, but still unforgettable. Mm-hmm. Like, fighting games are such a big part of who I am. Every day I'm putting out Twitter videos, YouTube content, or just engaging with our own unique memery or jokes, things that it's not that I'm flexing that only we can understand it, but to have a subculture consistently growing for so long to the point that we have our own humor. I mean, that's so powerful.
No, it absolutely is. And obviously you have compiled an insane amount of information and you're just spewing it out to anybody who wants to hear it. And a way that you do that is you commentate.
Yep.
Now, I have always been very impressed with everybody who's been able to commentate a fighting game tournament. And actually, before I met you, I actually saw you on the Defend the North YouTube videos. I saw you commentate that tournament. So I thought I saw you at the local tournament. I was like, oh, this guy's like probably a celebrity in this game space.
Yeah. You know, it's being a celebrity in the FGC it's always modest, right? Like, unless you're Justin Wan or Daigo or one of the like ancient legends, what matters is not like the overall Twitter follower account as a measurement of clout, but I think like the amount of places that you have been and people you've met offline and how consistently you're able to provide the support. And in the year since I graduated school in Geneva, New York, which gave me like a small hiatus from offline competing, I've been able to now like fully commit myself to fighting game content creation and the building up of this online tournament series called CASA, which I commentate for every week, helping out offline events in the New England region. I mean, I did the same in Buffalo. I did the same when I was there in summers as well during the college months. And even while I was in school, I was traveling around central New York, playing in Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo on the weekends, because as a disciple of fighting games, while I was in school, I brought people into the scene as well. And that was convenient because some of them had cars and would take me.
Yeah, you got to take advantage whenever you can. Man.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing. Like a fighting game player, right? It's a long-term plan that you commit to executing.
Exactly. And when you're commentating these events, like, how stressful is that? And how difficult is that? I imagine just keeping the energy up and saying the right things and having the right knowledge being conveyed. That must be a tough thing.
I think it would have been stressful if I hadn't already been talking and thinking about fighting games to such an intense degree for so long before I actually got on a mic or had a chance to commentate. In the first 2 years, no, I wouldn't say 2 years, but the first year or so of locals that I went to, there was like no mics on the stream setup, I think, or at least like the game that was on the stream setup wasn't one that I was knowledgeable about. But before there was commentary, there was crowd hype. And when you're standing behind a setup, there's the people that choose to like yell and get hype and provide the atmosphere that travels straight back to the arcade roots of the fighting game community in the 1990s. I would do that for the players that I love, of course, and my local homies. But if it's just a match, or if it's a match with not many stakes on the line outside of a tournament, what I was doing standing there watching a match while waiting was just talking to somebody else about it. And talking, as we all know, I mean, we're on a podcast here, talking is where knowledge happens. Like, this is discourse. This is how you build up a vocabulary to discuss fighting game occurrences, ideas, terminology, the linguistics of the scene. And you need like a glossary sometimes to understand fighting game technology or commentary.
Yeah, I've been learning on the fly, to be honest. Like, you taught me a lot of terms just from the short conversations we had at the last tournament.
Yeah. One of my long-term goals is to make the language of the scene more approachable, and to try and like make commentary still efficient, but not alienating to new players that aren't ready to instantly know what a meaty attack is, or okizeme, or even simple things like abbreviations for different moves.
Yeah, or just frame data.
Frame data, absolutely. Yes. That's one that is so important that I think is presented in a way that makes it too complicated too often.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I still don't fully grasp it, and I've been trying to for since I started playing this game.
I'll help you out after this. I can give you the lesson. Advantage and disadvantage, turn taking, all distant, not distant, close proximity to frame data. That frame data is just involved in the processes of. So yeah, like my comfort level on commentary is obscenely high. The only hard thing on commentary to this day is this thing that we call in the commentary community, the thing. The thing in commentary is the first sentences that you speak when the stream begins and you have to welcome people into the broadcast.
Oh yeah, that's always tough. Like I always like rehearse it in my head and everything, even just for this podcast, you know, and sometimes you stumble over the words or you forget to click the recording button, so you have to do it again and you're all flustered.
Yeah. So you do the thing on this podcast because you're the host, but before every broadcast, the typically two commentators look at each other and say, "So are you going to do the thing or am I doing the thing?"
The thing. I love that that's what it's called.
Yeah. Sajam is a prominent voice in the developing commentary community, and he made a video about the thing that has like formally titled the thing as the thing.
That's awesome.
So that's a staple.
I love it. Well, obviously everything that I've heard you commentate, you've always done a great job. I mean, you always, the number one thing you always do is show your knowledge. And that's one of the most important things as a commentator is really just inform the players of what's actually going on in front of them. Because sometimes these games can look so foreign to people in terms of what's happening. They're just like, I don't know. I'm just waiting for a fatality, I guess, you know? So,
yeah.
But I have also seen you with some of your tweets and the fact that you've kind of fallen off of the MK11 scene a little bit. I know you've had some gripes with how they've kind of made MK11 a little too, would you say, basic? Like what are your complaints for MK11 as opposed to MKX?
Well, MKX enables me as an offensive player and as somebody who deeply values powerful characters piloted by powerful players. This sounds very contradictory and hypocritical for a fighting game player that is so obsessed and always in pursuit of fighting game players with a great level of skill. But MK11 is actually so much more about the player than MKX. But what that creates is, to me, character designs that stand out a little bit less and have tools that are more similar to each other than the wild
more even game is what
you're saying. more even game, which is absolutely what so many people wanted. Like the strongest criticism of MKX was absolutely crazy characters with the strongest tools, super oppressive. But my philosophy on fighting games is a little different than the contemporary MK11 players, because I love when the characters can speak for themselves. That makes them iconic to me. Like there are moves in MKX that are so infamous that I just adore. And if you're willing to make such drastically powerful characters in a game that enables you to play in a way that you want, because the characters have such a different variety of play styles, then I think you have a more varied level of experience. And MKX provides that with some of the strongest zoners and keep away characters in a game that also has a run button that gets you across the screen in a second.
Yeah, I'm surprised they got rid of that.
Yeah. The MK11 movement is an interesting. It's slower than both MK9 and X, but similar to MK9 system where you can like dash around and block right away. But I think the amount of screen space you could make in MK9 was bigger, especially on some stages. So zoning could be more viable in that game as well. Like hard zoners that actually like have caused so many nightmares to this day. Cabal with instant air gas blast.
I know, watching a professional match with a Cabal was always so interesting. It was just constant going like this, tossing the blades and stuff. It was, even as someone who didn't really fully understand the game, I still thought it was really crazy.
So the super strong offense in MKX speaks to me because the character would help me so much in opening somebody up and making the game about what I like to do. Where in MK11, the players have to open you up with their bare hands. And that speaks a lot to their strength, to their ability to psychologize their opponent quickly. But my greatest hope is to make the game about me and the lab work that I did and the research that I did. I want you to feel so inferior because I don't want you to play. It'll be a single player game. But
There's that competitive edge.
Yeah, right. But the more powerful your characters are, the more the individual tools can interact in like very surprising ways. Like I remember I played Kun Jin in MKX, and he had a dive kick attack that created a full combo for like minimum 30% damage. Like,
oh my
it was
God.
very strong, super strong, really fast. And there were a lot of characters who zoned you from the air in MKX, like Kitana and like Takeda, for example, could like turn into this like ball that kicks you across the screen. And I remember I was playing Newbie in tournament, a really strong Takeda player. And he was really accustomed to just doing the ball roll attack to chase people down. I think it was safe on block and you could amplify it for a full combo. So when I played Kun Jin against him, I would kind of just float in the air really far away, waiting for him to use that attack, make it miss by jumping back. Most characters can't do anything once they jump back, but Kun Jin, because he's designed by the MKX team, could jump back, make it miss, and then instant dive kick it for a full combo punish.
Oh, jeez.
And I was like, yes.
That sounds so strong. Like, why wouldn't you use that?
Right.
Yeah, no, it sounds like MKX, it seems like it had a lot more variety. Mm-hmm. Whereas MK11 can feel kind of stale at times. I know that's the word that's commonly used amongst the haters.
The characters have like familiar drawbacks, and like if a move is going to be good for one reason, you can expect it to have drawbacks that are pretty consistent across the cast. Like a move that gives you advantage when the opponent blocks it is probably either really slow or has some interruptible gap.
Absolutely.
There's very rarely a move that is like purely godlike.
Purely broken. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's good in terms of just keeping it fair. Yep. But one thing that's really become apparent from joining the BFGC is the fact that games like Tekken 7 and Street Fighter 5, they seem to have a stronger following. The games seem to have more staying power compared to all of the different NRS games that come out. Why do you think there's such a massive difference between fans of those games and fans of Mortal Kombat?
I think it's legacy. NetherRealm has been making competitive games for a long time, and people in Buffalo especially have always enjoyed watching the games that NetherRealm provides, but because the scene has such a long lineage of Tekken, especially, like those guys have been playing since the 1990s, and many of them are still here, still playing. Tekken just won't go anywhere. It's cooked into the lifeblood of the scene, and they're dedicated, and they have to play offline because Tekken's online play is just kind of intolerable.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Whether it's because of lag or because after
it's an older game, right? It's an older game.
Tekken 7 came out in 2017 in the US.
Okay, so that's not that old.
Yeah. When every time you finish an online match in that game, you have to go through another loading screen where the announcer says, "Get ready for the next battle," and it's just like it sucks your soul. Like whatever thought you had about your opponent, however you were trying to adapt, you have plenty of time to forget in that long loading screen. It
has such an arcade feel.
I wish it were as fast as like the offline experience where you're more constantly stimulated, thinking, playing. Because the more matches you get to play quickly, the more immersed in the session you get to be.
Yeah.
And with somebody next to you also talking with you about it, that's got to be the most ideal experience.
Yeah, and I get that feeling from MK11 all the time too, because it's so fast in between matches. Like even if I get super pissed off after losing a close match in Combat League, like I'm able to just slam the X button and just jump right into the next match.
Yeah. Yeah. unless the other player is just deciding to delay things by, just taking their own time. But that's so rare because we're all the same machine while we're trying to play that game. Like, even if we all play very differently or at different levels, we want more quickly. And when you're playing online, you're not in the tournament mode where you have to be very careful about how, like, the amount of time you take to think between matches, or you may be that kind of player that doesn't articulate in their own head when thinking about what's happening and would rather instantly go into the match to keep the experience fresh so that you don't sever any connections you were about to make in your head watching their play.
It's a lot of mind games. I mean, that's basically the basis of fighting games. That's one of the huge things I've learned, is that it's all about keeping your mindset right, not getting burnt out, and just focusing.
Yeah, there's a nice philosophical theory of fighting games made by a Korean player named Laugh, who made a triangle out of heart, body, and mind. So a mind-based player would be a player like me that does tons of research in training mode, in watching other people's matches online or even offline, somebody who just observes and is familiar with what different characters do and what players can choose to do or not do with them. The heart is how willing you are to commit to something you believe to be true. So that would be making reads and predictions correctly, even if it's unconventional, to pick up on something and know that your body won't be able to react to it, but you still assume correctly. It's an essential skill and the least tangible. It is so, like, it's like effervescent. It's like being a strong heart-based player is incredibly difficult, but incredibly rewarding. And then the body is your ability to execute what your fingers can make happen on the controller with the stick, and how quickly you can do so without hesitating or even thinking about it. So things like a quick anti-air attack, right on cue as soon as they jump at you, the ability to react and respond and not miss. So
the disciple of fighting games has spoken. Wow, that's some knowledge right there. I like that.
So I really wish my body were stronger in a lot of games. But if you're leaning too heavily on the side of mind or heart, you may slow your body's response. There are some players, though, that I think have the full 5 out of 5 filled triangle chart with all of them.
So like the top players like Sonic Fox, Ninja Killa, those people that have won these offline pro competitions.
Ninja Killa's body is 10 out of 5. The execution on Ninja Killa is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. Yeah. Watching that guy play, he's like a robot.
Yeah. And like, it's not even a question if he's going to go for the hardest but most optimal combo choice. He will, and he will hit it. And that also shows such like a discipline to never make a sacrifice to do anything easier, because that means even in high pressure situations, he will be able to perform. And that's the edge you need when you're going up against players like Sonic Fox or Dragon or any top player.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Watching those guys play is absolutely on a whole other level, and not many people can reach that level. Mm-hmm. But let's broaden the scope here a little bit. We've been talking a lot about competitive fighting games, but in terms of competitive esports in general, why do you think that competitive fighting games is viewed as more of a niche compared to the esports scenes of, let's say, League of Legends, CSGO, even Fortnite, all those games?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for a long time, so I'm actually excited to give you the answer on this one.
Awesome.
The barrier of entry for fighting games is higher in some regards, but also incorrectly viewed as higher in other regards. The most important one, though, I think, is the financial barrier of entry. Fighting games typically have like pricey DLC models, which incentivize you to pay extra money to keep up with the characters being released. It's pretty important for the developers and publishers to actually like maintain some kind of profit margin, and DLC seems to be the only way to do it. And it also is a good way of keeping the community engaged and the game fresh. So, I mean, everybody's going to do that, but compared to a game like League of Legends or Dota or MOBAs, which have tons of characters that rotate on free-to-play weeks, I think is their model. That is giving people a variety of experiences almost infinitely for free forever if they want. They're counting on your eventual like for the game to grow to the point that you do want to spend money on it. And they're also counting on you to be playing that game with teammates. Teammates you're guaranteed to have because the games are played like 5v5 as far as I know. And because they're free, everybody's picking it up, just like the MK9 demo when it came out. And those games also run on PCs, which everybody has as well. So socially, it's really hard to expect a fighting game to ever match the population of players for free-to-play team-based games that catch on and have constant dev support. That's really hard to compete with. Some fighting games have tried, like Killer Instinct, I remember, launched for free, but you only get to play Jago.
So
give me a second character at least.
Yeah, come on. That's such a limited way to play the game. But honestly, just two questions to follow up to your points. So the first one, do you think that a lot of it has to do with, let's say, just going back to the normal sports world, the difference of popularity between the NFL, where people can rally behind a team, they have this image of a city that they can that is being represented by this team, and then the popularity of tennis, where you're basically just following one person.
Yeah,
like you can be a fan of someone like Sonic Fox or Ninja Killer, but it's not the same as being a fan of TSM or Cloud9. You know,
right? That's an incredibly important discussion. Any fighting game player will tell you that the individuality of fighting games and fighting game expression is the most important thing to them, because you, in your own scene, are an individual, but your scene will eventually travel to other events to compete against other cities. And that's when you're a team comprised of individuals that only became a team because you beat each other up for the past like year in one game, and now you need to show what that's worth. So it's a bit of a heartbreaker when you have to look to one of your apprentices and say, all right, well, I have to eliminate you in this tournament, but they will still back you up when you are up against someone from another scene that they don't know. And so it's not as sustainable to only be a fan of a player or of a scene if you're a part of it. That's not really how you can reliably accrue spectators. One thing that is starting to prove very popular for players creating fans and supporters and spectators is streaming. A very individual pursuit, but players like Smug in Street Fighter and in Mortal Kombat, we have big streamers like Video Games Yo. Yeah. When Ninja Killer streams, there's thousands of views at the drop of a hat. Sonic Fox, for example, and they have YouTube content as well, so they can grow their brand on their own end and let either the mystique of their skill attract new players, or let everybody who's already in the scene who appreciates the level of their play grow their stream as well and kind of attract numbers. So I think like the best example for sure in the whole community is Smug, because Smug's YouTube content gets like tens of thousands of views in a day, like guaranteed, because his editing's so good. Like he is truly hilarious. He's able to like talk directly to you while playing intense high-level sets, and sometimes he'll be playing and he'll make his stream full screen on just his player cam so he can like do some skit or like dance on the fly, like, and he still doesn't lose while doing this. And so it's no wonder. It's no wonder that he has the strongest content performance. Sajam as well, not as a player, but as a fighting game commentator and personality, has amazing YouTube content in addition to his Twitch stream presence. So he has an editor that edits his streams and his discussion material into video essays. Privilege, right? I need that. My YouTube content would be amazing if I had that.
You got to put someone on your payroll, Matt. Come on.
Yeah. My payroll with no revenue. I only wish. So I'm a little slower to get anything out compared to that, but Sajam's not really the standard to compete with because that man at age 22 commentated Evo 2016 for Street Fighter 5.
22?
Yeah,
Man, that's
I'm 23 now, so it is unhealthy to think of yourself in competition with like someone who has done so much for the scene so quickly, like Stephen Lyon, who's like a huge personal inspiration of mine. Check out Sajam, please. He like has the best fighting game introductory content, and it comes out so regularly.
yeah. All right, yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. That's
Mhm.
some great information to give our 50 viewers of this video.
Yeah,
um,
up and
but
up.
so that was my first question in response. But my second question is, do you think that maybe these fighting game developers, they maybe don't invest enough energy into the competitive scenes compared to, like you said, the DLC, the expansion of the
Mhm.
regular content such as story mode, as we're seeing with MK11 Aftermath? Do you think they just don't focus on that enough, and they don't make the prize pools big enough and all that stuff?
Um, some developers and publishers have an excellent esports presence, which is still very new to the scene, and a lot of people in the scene have been around making competitive tournaments happen since before esports was a word or even a buzzword. Like
Right.
this has been going down since the 1990s. The first Evo was 2002, and that wasn't even the first tournament. Like NEC has been around since 1999, I think, and that's still running every year. So people are like hesitant also to lose the independent power that the scene has built through years of grassroots organization. Um, I am on the side that if we were to live in like a fully esports fighting game community, we would lose an unbelievable amount of culture and history because each major tournament we have, whether it's Combo Breaker, Evo, CEO, the Big E events in Philadelphia, each have their own flavor. Um, Combo Breaker is the premier competitive player experience. They have a 24-hour open venue for players to constantly play and grind and meet each other in game too for entire days at a time, just playing. Even if you're eliminated from the tournament, you still get to keep practicing and like diagnose your problems as a player. So I was very excited to go to Combo Breaker this year, but it was canceled due to COVID-19. So
Yeah.
it was going to be my first as well.
Oh man.
I
That
made it to CEO 2019 though, so I was able to experience the wrestling themed motifed tournament, witnessing the players ringside entrances where they get to pick their music and bring out their squad to
Oh
like
man, that would have
have
been
the support.
awesome. I would have
Yeah.
loved that.
CEO is the coolest tournament to watch in VODs because the camera angles they get on these players make them look like WWE gods, you know?
That's incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, I was also affected by COVID in terms of this, unfortunately, because I was going to go to Final Combat as well, just to go watch. Like I wasn't gonna play. I was literally just gonna go watch. So
So
your
the
brother had a very big issue too.
yeah, the 14-hour bus ride from Buffalo to Chicago, on which on hour 12 he found out that the last chance qualifier for Final Combat had been canceled with less than a day in advance.
Yep,
So people were on flights, on buses,
me
drives to get
included.
there. Yeah. That happened to you too?
Yeah, I was well, okay. So basically, we found out the night before we were gonna fly to Chicago.
Okay. So,
Um,
oof.
but we still decided to go and just check out the city, you know.
Oh,
But
that's cool. Yeah.
I was still bummed because I was like, oh, I really wanted to go watch like some really high level Mortal Kombat, but what can you do?
I feel so bad just
Yeah,
for that whole fiasco.
yeah.
Um, Were you able to get reimbursed? I know that Warner Brothers promoted reimbursement as well.
They reimbursed my tickets for the actual event, but I didn't
Okay.
even ask to get reimbursed for the travel because we still like went on vacation. We
Oh,
went to
that's cool.
Sears Tower. We did all the fun stuff in Chicago before it was all shut down, so it was fine.
That's I'm actually so happy that you were able to make a good trip out of it because Chicago's a cool city. You know, it's
Yeah,
an American icon, and that's I mean, that's something worth talking about in the fighting game community as well. You truly get to like go coast to coast if you want to. Like I never in my life would I have gone to Daytona Beach, Florida, and driven past the Daytona International Motor Speedway if not for CEO in 2019.
That's a great place to go to.
Like the amount of history there that people just like don't want to talk about is like so it makes going there yourself so worthwhile. Like Daytona is truly iconic for a section of the United States that I like hardly interact with, either politically or geographically.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I get where you're going towards.
The vacationers there are a different kind of American citizen than I am.
It's a different breed.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. But no, you're right. I mean,
I truly mean no offense, because some of the people that were in the same hotel that I stayed with my fellow fighting game players were really nice to me, you know. No awkward elevator situations or anything in particular.
So you're saying the stench of disagreement wasn't sensed in those elevators?
Yeah. I mean, if you're at Daytona, whether it's, I mean, I don't think they thought we would be at Daytona to have a good time at a fighting game tournament, but if you're in Daytona, you're there for a good time.
Oh, yeah.
And whether or not you find it is really up to you. You'll run into a lot of things there, though, let me tell you.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I mean, fighting game tournaments go on all around the country. And if you're willing to travel and put up the money to go experience the stuff, then it's can be an experience of a lifetime.
The only reason I've been to Vegas and experienced 110-degree nights was because of the fighting game community. Evo is hosted there every year. And with that experience came the experience of Las Vegas restaurants, themed restaurants. One restaurant I went to was themed around unhealthy food, specifically death. It was called the Heart Attack Grill.
Oh.
And, yeah. You walk in there and every waitress is a nurse. And if you don't finish your quadruple bypass burger or whatever it is you choose to order alongside the optional item of unfiltered cigarettes, which they don't actually sell anymore, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. If you don't finish what you choose to order, they have like a spanking podium where like you get up there and these nurses will straight up just perform this like punishment and everybody watches. And that's something that happened to me because I went to Evo to play in a fighting game tournament.
Oh,
do interviews.
This would only work in Vegas.
Yeah.
The city filled with vices. There's no way that would work anywhere else.
Yeah. Oh, also, while I was on the podium, there was some kind of like protest outside, like against this restaurant's existence, and people were wearing like Guy Fawkes masks. And I made eye contact while I was on the stage.
Oh no.
So like, what a life experience, though, right?
Yeah, and you can only thank fighting games for that life experience, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, fighting game experience is very high risk, creative restaurant entrepreneurs.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Well, we'll wrap up this pretty soon, but I wanted to. So we're gonna divert back to the technical talk a little bit. I know you love Granblue Fantasy Versus. I know this is your game right now, so I'm just gonna give you the floor. Tell our viewers and listeners why people should play Granblue and what is so great about this game.
So Granblue is experimental in a way that I appreciate deeply. Granblue has a very different resource management system than most fighting games that I've played. And it has completely new ways to interact with the idea of using in-game resources. So there, like all fighting games, there's special moves that you can do with a directional input followed by a face button. In Granblue, though, you have the option of doing special moves very quickly without the directional input by doing a quick input special move, which are mapped. Each character has 4 special moves, basically. So there's one on forward, one on back, one on down, and one on neutral for the stick position or movement stick position. And that allows you to, there's a drawback of using the quick input moves.
Right, because that'd be broken if there wasn't, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone would just do them all the time.
Yeah.
The drawback is that there's a larger cooldown on using the quick input moves. So you're not able to use them again for a longer amount of time than if you did the full input. but that allows you to have an economy of decision making where there are some situations where you want to use the quick input version, say when you have to react really quickly with a special move that makes you go invincible and go through an attack. I use easy input, quick input DP in like such wild ways that I would never have been able to do a regular DP input in time for. And then on the alternative, if I'm trying to do like a Dragon Punch DP attack in a combo, I have plenty of time to just do the full input because I'm already in my own combo. So I'm very comfortable just doing that. And as a result, I get to have a shorter cooldown on that move and use it again sooner. There are so many facets of this game that let you make cool decisions that other games haven't presented me with yet. In addition to like a very good uniformity with how hard knockdowns and offense work. Not to get too detailed, but a hard knockdown is a really important thing in fighting games because it allows you to get right up in the opponent's face after already having hit them. Mm-hmm. So you get to create momentum. And the only knockdowns that provide that in Granblue are sweep attacks and EX moves. EX moves being a version of your move that has the longest cooldown by far. Even longer if you use the quick input version. So you kind of, within like a couple days of playing the game, you get its rhythm. And every character has the same kind of like knockdown ability. I mean, not the exact same, right? But
right.
It's a pattern that you makes something that I like to be universal, while the character designs themselves are not universal at all. So
the character designs seem really cool with that game, as it's such like an anime style that's just so over the top, and I love it, honestly.
Yeah, like you get some really cool different gameplay abilities across the cast, and they've experimented so fearlessly. There's a character in that game named Loane who is an absolute sniveling coward, and he basically has these like robots, and like his two younger brothers fight for him, and his super moves, every character has two super moves at least, are transformations that either bring in the two brothers to form a human pyramid that he like invincibly attacks you with and mixes you up for a short amount of time, or he leaves the screen and this like goddess, this like 40-foot tall goddess that they all like worship, fights for him for like 10 seconds or something. And it turns the game into this mini game straight out of like 1 versus 3 Mario Party. Like it feels so unfair. You're just fighting this boss that's being piloted by the player. And at no point do you think Loane deserved that. But that so perfectly fits his character of being this like he's like a very show off, like conniving guy that then clearly is also completely unable to fight you and is a coward. And canonically, when he's fighting other characters in the game, once you go to his win pose, you find that the fight you just saw is him and his two brothers making up a story about how they beat some real good fighter in order to impress a girl.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow, this game just seems so intricate. It sounds great, honestly. You're really selling it.
I'm hooked. The only problem is the online netcode is a little mediocre, especially in comparison to Mortal Kombat. So
I mean, Mortal Kombat's the best, right? I mean, I'm biased, but Mortal Kombat has the best netcode, right?
It's elite. That's why it's one of the 4 games included in EVO Online 2020. A really good way to compensate, I think, for the pandemic shutting down offline events. They picked
wasn't it not included in EVO initially?
Yes, but now that we're all about that good netcode, Mortal Kombat is back with that #1 spot, along with Them's Fighting Herds, Skullgirls, and Killer Instinct.
Awesome.
And like, God bless like Western developed games for like actually caring about our online experience. It's truly like Japanese devs or publishers in suits refusing to invest either by laziness or not willing to spend money on it. Even though you can very cheaply source GGPO, a formula for rollback netcode that has made all these games play online across the globe amazingly. The 4 games in EVO Online 2020 all use it or a version of it, GGPO. So like rollback netcode is the future, and only for a couple games is it the present right now, and that's deeply
That's
depressing.
nuts.
Yeah.
like when you know something so perfect is right there, why wouldn't you use it for every single game possible? You know?
Yeah. There's at least a small wave being made in Japan. Street Fighter 5 tried a version of rollback netcode, but messed it up. And Guilty Gear is going to launch with rollback netcode, the new one.
Okay.
That'll be the first of many big wins because Arc System Works is one of the most important developers for fighting games, and Guilty Gear is like their mainstay title. So if they make the new Guilty Gear with it, then everything they make going forward will also have it. Meaning, I need to hold out hope for Granblue Fantasy Versus eventually having rollback netcode because this game deserves so much growth.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible game, and it sounds like you're projecting some great growth and improvement in the fighting game universe in general, and I'm very excited. I'm also very excited that you decided to come on to this little podcast that I've been doing to give me all of your knowledge about the fighting game world and entertain my listeners and viewers. Why don't you plug your social media, tell everybody where they can find your content?
Yeah, so the most important one to me right now that I grind the hardest on making 2-minute and 19-second videos for is Twitter. Twitter has that 2-minute, 19-second video limit. So yeah. I'm on Twitter at FGMonkeyBizness. There you will find many clips of me speaking, playing, usually both at the same time, but the commentary clips are coming up on there pretty frequently too. I'm trying to innovate a little bit and make commentary montages of my best moments, not necessarily a reel, but even very tiny noteworthy things that were said or talked about in matches. So the next thing I want to do on there and also on my YouTube is commentary philosophy videos that break down the language and choices that commentators make or have been making for years. A lot of the terminology we use is just absorbed through osmosis rather than intentional education and definitions. So I really want to try and make a new fighting game glossary, and that'll be my next big series. I've been working on it for a long time. So on my YouTube is FGCMonkeyBizness because there's no Twitter limit on there. And on Twitch, it is also FGCMonkeyBizness. It's got to be FGC because I think there's actually another esports team called Monkey Business for a different game.
Yeah, so
and I always want to rep the scene that has given me so much life for so long. So
that's awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, this is going to be the introduction of esports into Another Damn Sports podcast. Thank you so much, Matt, for coming on. Thank you to everybody who checked out this video and who listened on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and take care.
Thank you very much. Peace.